On to a different topic. A wonderful guest for you guys. It's syndicated columnist Froma Harrop, if I'm saying that right, and that's not likely. I'm not good with names, ironically, with a name like Cenk Uygur. She has written about immigration. I want to talk to her about that in a second. First, Froma, how do you say your name?
Froma Harrop, you were perfect.
Oh, nailed it. Okay, feeling fantastic. I'm in a groove today. All right. So, Froma, if you are for limiting immigration to this country, prove to me that you're not a racist.
Well, are Canadians racist? They limit immigration. The French people limit immigration. Everyone does. I mean, you have rules for immigration. The United States admits more people legally every year than the rest of the world combined. I don't think we have to, prove that we're racist because we don't want that. We want to keep it within our large limits.
Okay, now, first of all, the Canadians are notoriously racist. Everybody knows that. So,
well, they're not actually.
I'm kidding. Okay, so now,
okay, all right.
Now, I know you've written about whether this immigration leads to people calling others racist, rightfully or wrongly, and I think you think wrongly many times. But first, tell me your position on immigration. What do you think should be? What do you think America should do about immigration?
Okay, first of all, I think there's an excellent proposal in Washington. That's the Schumer, Lindsey Graham proposal that would establish the so-called path to citizenship. We can call it amnesty. I don't mind for most of the immigrants here illegally, but that would establish an airtight system for making sure that illegal workers are not hired in the future. Mm-hmm. And that system would be what amounts to a counterfeit-proof Social Security card. It would have biometric information on it, and every employer who wants to hire someone, would have to send that information to Washington, and it would come back in most cases in a few minutes. And if the person gets a green light, that person's hired. If not, they're not. And if the employer wants to ignore those rules and just hire people without the proper documentation, then they get hit with big fines and possible jail time.
Okay, and so that sounds fairly similar to what I am proposing. So you believe in a pathway to citizenship, X number of years, 7 years, 10 years, 12 years, whatever it is, and then they get to become citizens. Is that right?
Yes, and I believe in that. But I think that if you have a real effective reform in place, this is the last amnesty. We don't have to be doing this every 5-10 years.
No, Froma, I'm actually totally with you. I think there should be a one strike and you're out. If we reform it and we do this pathway to citizenship, if you violate the laws, you're done. You can't ever be a citizen. What do you think?
You mean after this?
Yeah, after this.
Well, I haven't really thought much about that. I suppose you could do that. Yeah, I could live with that.
All right, now, so we're in agreement on this, but, you're known as a progressive columnist, and Froma's in 150 different newspapers, right? Throughout the country. But you are perceived, at least partly through your writing, and I know one of the articles that I read, as, defending people who are, defending the people who are called racist for being against immigration, right? If I've said that in a way that makes sense. But I don't see how your position is you're not defending your position, you're defending the right-wingers from being called racist, or am I getting it wrong?
No, I think I was, to be specific, I think I was commenting on a lot of the people who backed the law in Arizona, mm-hmm. which I disagree with, because I think it does single out Hispanic people, for special treatment, and that makes it really unfortunate. But I think a lot of the people who do support that law are just very frustrated with the situation, with what they perceive as a lack of enforcement. Ironically, the Obama administration has done more enforcement of the immigration laws than presidents in the last 20, 30 years have.
Okay, so, no, I get it, but I don't think people say that everybody who supports the Arizona law is a racist. I think 70% of Arizona supports that law. So,
Yeah.
you know, but at the same time, you acknowledge that some who do support that law are racist. Some.
Yes, I'm sure. Absolutely.
Right.
I'm sure. And I've also heard from Latino readers in Arizona. I am in the Arizona Republic, who have criticized me for being critical of the law. They say I'm Latino, but you know, the chaos caused by this unruly border is making me crazy as well.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think is their biggest source of frustration? Right. So let's remove the racism issue, and look, right wingers rile that up. Okay, let's keep it real. And
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right. And they're like, oh, the Mexicans are coming to take your job, et cetera, right? And that's where some of this is bred, right? Now, but that's only some percentage. That's not nearly everybody, not even close. You and I agree on that, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think is their, you know, motivating the larger chunk of those folks, Arizona or otherwise, throughout the
Well, I think that many people are concerned. Not, you know, I think they recognize a lot of these immigrants are as really, you know, good, hardworking people, and they respect that. But I do think they also regard them as a potential burden to them as taxpayers, because it is true that, you know, Latinos do have you know, high rates of teenage pregnancies. They have high dropout rates from high school, and they're there in such huge numbers now that I think it's sort of unsettling people who are not who don't necessarily have anything against brown people.
Yeah, but but that concerns me, because that sounds like, hey, these Irish immigrants are coming in and they got their own ways and they're having kids early and they're drinking too much, and I mean, haven't we seen that movie before in America? And isn't that partly racial, ethnic, true or untrue stereotypes? Because the Irish do drink a lot. But
there are stereotypes, and this is a movie we've seen before, true in many ways, but there's always been from the left sort of a countervailing force, a countervailing argument that sort of protects American workers. For example, Samuel Gompers, the founder of the not the AFL. He made immigration one of his main programs. I mean, he made immigration control one of them. And
so there's a real progressive strain that I think people have forgotten about, that you're writing about, Froma. And we're talking to Froma Harrop.
Yeah.
She's among actually the top 20 nationally syndicated columnists in the country. Her column appears in 150 newspapers throughout the country. There's this old progressive strain of, hey, listen, we don't want cheap labor coming into the country because we want Americans to have good wages, and we don't want that to compete. Are you in some ways trying to make a comeback for that old progressive strain?
Yes, and here's an interesting set of facts that Los Angeles were largely African Americans. They were unionized and they had pretty decent wages and benefits. And then there was a massive influx of Latino workers into Los Angeles, and the unions collapsed, and the black janitors were out of a job.
So
now being a big-hearted liberal, I don't hold it against the Latino workers for wanting to have jobs, for wanting to be here, but I do think that the African American janitors needed someone to defend them.
See, JR, I told you need to go to war with Jesus. You didn't listen to me, okay? JR is our producer, Jesus is our normal director. But anyways,
well, Cesar Chavez, who organized, the grape pickers in California, he brought a bunch of his people down to the border to stop Mexicans from crossing over and taking their jobs.
That's interesting. I did not know that. That's a fascinating piece of history. So then what's the limit that you think we should have? I mean, is there a number? Would you limit immigration significantly after we have the pathway to citizenship, et cetera?
No, I don't feel qualified to set the number. I think the one number you can reduce to zero is illegal immigration. The number of legal immigrants should be reduced to zero. The number of legal immigrants now are approximately, I think the number is usually 800,000, 900,000 a year. And I think that number should vary according to the economic needs of the moment. I mean, if we're in a recession and there's high unemployment, you reduce them. If you have a time of growth, you raise them. Although I do think, there is also an environmental concern here, and it's population growth in the United States. Here's another liberal issue, and this is an issue that has sort of torn the environmental movement apart. The issue of whether environmentalists should make a stink over immigration as the main driver of population growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where folks lose me. I'm more of a progressive than a liberal there. If you were playing word games here, but look, there's a lot of folks in the world. What can you do?
Well, yeah, and here are some numbers. Remember, in 1970 Earth Day, population was the big obsession on Earth Day in 1970, and the reason it was safe to be that way in 1970 because the concern was that all these baby boomers, mainly white kids, would be having lots of children as their parents had, mm-hmm. and then and back then I think Nixon, Richard Nixon wanted a population policy. He said that if the American population continued to grow at current rates, the nation's, and this is his quote, social supplies, the capacity to educate youth, to provide privacy and living space, to maintain the processes of open democratic government may be grievously strained. Since then, the number of people in this country has risen by over 100 million. It's about 308 million today. It's projected to be 435 million by 2050, and it could hit 1 billion by next century.
Yeah,
that's a lot of people driving a lot of cars, living in big houses. The Americans have this huge environmental footprint.
No, I understand that, but I'm not Malthusian. I mean,
you don't want to go there, okay?
No, because I think it's then so what? They should stay in Mexico where they're going to be poorer and hence can't have a car and a fridge. I mean, it doesn't. To me, that's not a winning argument. And besides,
there's a countervailing theory to yours. And that is that first of all, Mexican birth rates have plunged. They're now at about replacement level.
Fantastic.
And the only reason the population is growing so much now is because there are many women in the childbearing ages. That's going to end, and there are projections that in 10, 20 years from now, the population of Mexico may actually start declining.
But that makes my point. Look, the population, as any scientist will tell you, is going to balance out at some point. Now, it's going to balance out at a high number. Estimates are
it could balance out at 1 billion Americans.
Okay, rock and roll.
Okay. Well, okay, it's not my party.
Right. I mean, look, from a last thing on this is that, and if you start cutting down on immigrants, look, immigrants are some of the hardest working people in the country. And,
that's right.
And the legal immigrants, are usually in the high education brackets, right? And they are entrepreneurs, et cetera, and we need that. I mean, that's a lifeline.
We do need those workers, and in fact, the Schumer-Graham proposal would favor high-skilled workers more than low-skilled workers. But because of the rules covering family unification, et cetera, we still have many poor people coming to this country, and I don't object to that. But you can't have mass numbers of poor, uneducated people competing against the most vulnerable American workers, who are the people without high school degrees.
Well, I hear you, except the Statue of Liberty says, give me your poor, you're tired, et cetera. It doesn't say, give me your rich and you're really highly educated. So, I mean, so there's a balancing act. That's all I'm saying. Last question for you, unrelated to any of this, Froma. I'm just curious. Your name's fascinating. Where are you originally from?
Okay, well, I'm originally from New York City, and so are my parents. But on my mother's side, I'm Spanish Jewish, and on my father's side, I'm German Jewish. So.
Oh, okay. All right. That's fascinating.
So,
okay. All right. Just curious.
And Froma, my first name is of German origin.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But But is Harrop Spanish or German or?
Harrop is actually English. That was my late husband's last name.
Oh, okay, that's why I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, so my name is a real mixed bag.
Okay, all right, now we know. All right, Froma, thanks for joining us and having an interesting conversation. We really enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, Young Turks.